We are broadcasting from the AXA auditorium in Barcelona, and this is being broadcast all over the world thanks to the YouTube channel of OAFI. And please, you have all our radio programs there, both on arthrosis and sport, and previous conferences, including also the first symposium on sport. One of the passionately interesting projects, and I personally really am very interested because it's OAFI is actively participating, is the Preventomics Project. And the goal is personalized food habits. That is, for each one of us to eat what our bodies really need. We're going to say hello to Josep Maria del Vat. He's the person responsible of Eurecat, the company in Spain that is in charge of this Preventomics project. And I would like our communications manager to come along also to represent OAFI. Mr. Del Bas, I do believe that you have a wonderful presentation. Isn't that the case? To tell us more about what Preventomics is. You have the floor. Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to go back again to normal life after what has been happening, yes, and to start moving and traveling about. For the next minutes, I'm going to be talking about this concept of personalized nutrition. It seems to be a very futuristic, avant-garde technological concept, but it has its raison d'être, and that is that, well, on the basis of different studies that have been carried out, we have been seeing that this is a very powerful tool, maybe the most powerful tool to promote the change in food habits and behavior among the population. And this is really important from the standpoint of public health and for the different administrations, because as most of you, I'm sure, must know, there is a whole panoply of diseases with very high prevalence in our society directly related with bad food habits. So changing bad food habits then is one of the key goals of organizations such as the WHO, the European Commission. This is a goal for the coming years. When we talk about diseases that have to do with bad food habits, the first thing we think of is possibly obesity. Obesity indeed is a problem. It's a global problem. Here we have a map of the United States of America, what the situation was in 1985 to 2014, 4 decades. We see how in 1985 the prevalence of obesity was practically zero. We have, white and blue on the map. And we see as time goes on, only 4 decades, we are getting to a situation in which the prevalence of obesity is really alarming. In some states, more than 35 or 40% of the population. And this is not a problem only of the United States of America. If we go to a world map, we see how the red color grows as time goes by, except in the less developed countries. But we do see that in developed countries right now, and also, and this is very concerning, in those developing countries, obesity is becoming a global pandemic level problem. I mean, this is data from 2013. If we were to show you the current map of the world, we would see how in India and China, obesity is also highly prevalent. It would be, red too. So this is a problem we must solve, because obesity, as we know, is not obesity in itself as a problem, but it's all the associated diseases, diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular problems, problems that have to do with the bones, the joints. Obesity has been associated also with some types of cancer. And now we are doing research about the correlation between obesity and mental health problems. So obesity is really, physiologically speaking, it is also a global problem. However, all research points towards something very important to take into account. It's not obesity in itself. I mean, obesity is understood as a body mass index over 30, and this BMI is calculated on the basis of height divided by weight square. And I mean, of course, it's what we weigh on the basis of our height. But this is not what is most relevant. What is most relevant for health is how obesity, in fact, affects our metabolism. And this has been seen in studies such as the one you have now on the screen. 2013, it was published in Science magazine, and they studied mortality in a specific population. Here at the top, you see this triangle, yes, which is increasing. You see the increased mortality, and mortality was associated to different physical traits of individuals. We see on the right how individuals with the higher mortality in that target population that was followed for some time was 21% obese individuals. They had a BMI over 30, but furthermore, they had metabolic problems. And on the other side, those with the lower levels of mortality in that period of time are slim individuals with normal BMI, with no metabolic problems. But the surprise came in this study and others when we analyze the intermediate cases, because next, let us see, those lower levels of mortality happened in also obese individuals, but however, that had no important metabolical problems. And surprisingly, 10% of this population with more mortality belongs to individuals with normal BMI, that is slim people, but with metabolic problems. So in fact, what does correlate with greater mortality is not really obesity per se, but rather the status of the metabolism. But when we talk about metabolism, what's interesting really is to go in and do some research as to every person's metabolism to be able to determine what our health status is. But here we have a huge challenge in front of us. Let me show you the human metabolism. Here you have it. This is the map of the human metabolism. It's a highly complex network of biochemical interactions. And furthermore, it doesn't look too complex on the screen because it doesn't seem too large. But this is just what we could call a satellite view image. If you were to go to each one of these little dots that you see in the network, you encounter things like this. So then the complexity of studying the metabolism is huge. Just to give you some figures, in our body, the human body right now, you can detect more than 16,000 different molecules that we synthesize ourselves, that we produce, okay, in an endogenous manner. Then you can detect more than 1,500 molecules that come from drugs and medicines, and very important, more than 22,000 that come from what we eat. And, when people say we are what we eat from a metabolic point, makes full sense. But then, and on the basis of this complexity, you'll ask, is it possible to study the metabolism? Can we see what the status of somebody's metabolism is? In recent decades, a number of technologies, analysis technologies have been developed that make it possible with a very small sample, such as the one you see in the image. These are approximately 100 microliters of a sample, either of blood or any other liquid. And with these very small samples, you can carry out dozens, even hundreds of different molecules that circulate within our bodies in different tissues and fluids. And this makes it possible for us not so much to know the full map of the metabolism that we see on the right, but rather to know very well about some key points in the metabolism. We can analyze some key molecules in the metabolism in such a way that we get an idea of the metabolic health of our bodies. And in this way, we can start studying the metabolic status of an individual using these technologies. So very simply, this is yet another study published a couple of years ago in Cell Metabolism Journal. I won't go into too much detail. I'll only tell you about the conclusions. The conclusions drawn were that with the analysis of 49 different molecules, those circulating within our bodies, it is possible to classify individuals according to cardiovascular events suffered throughout every individual's life. So by analyzing this metabolism, we have a certain predictive ability. It gives us a solid idea. Yes, analyzing the metabolism, we can know what our health is like, what our health status actually is. Well, then the next question, the next research question was, could we change the metabolism before any disease is manifested? And this meant the birth of our project, Preventomics. Preventomics is the acronym of empowering consumers, okay, in order to prevent diseases related to diet through omic sciences. The sciences I just mentioned. This is quite an ambitious project financed by the European Commission. 3 years duration. We should have finished already, but of course the pandemic affected us dramatically, so we had to extend the period. We will be completing this next year. It's nearly 7 million euro, 19 different partners from 7 different European countries. This is a project coordinated by Eurecat, the technological nutrition and health unit that I am the manager of from the city of Reus in Spain. And there are 10 research institutions participating, 5 small and medium enterprises, 1 large company, 1 standardization agency, the Spanish agency, UNE, a consumer association, OCU, also the Spanish Consumer Association, and a patient association, and I don't really remember now exactly where from, but we have them. Yes, and OAFI is also part of this project. Well, what is the basis of it all? What is the science behind this project? We base it all on the postulates of a group of Dutch scientists, and some are working on our project. We were able to get them to collaborate. And this Dutch research group defined that high prevalence diseases that we have nowadays have their cause in 4 main elements, as though it were, air, wind, water, and fire. Well, something similar. These 4 basic elements are those you see on the screen: oxidative stress, metabolic stress, inflammatory stress, and psychological stress. These 4 different types of stresses that we are exposed to every day, to a certain degree, are caused by external factors. For example, the food we eat, so bad food habits would lead to metabolic stress. UV radiation means oxidative stress, for example, and free radicals. Then not sleeping enough, smoking, lack of physical exercise, pollution, all these external factors, together with some of our own, such as our gene pool, lead to these stresses happening in our organisms. But we have the ability to counteract these stresses, to neutralize them. Our bodies, for example, when facing free radicals that generate oxidation, have many mechanisms to neutralize that. In metabolic stress, our bodies also can react to neutralize specific stressors. The problem comes when these stresses happen all the time in a chronic manner, and they undermine our ability to counteract. Of course, eventually a disruption point happens and stress alters the organism. And we've seen, in fact, that this is a network. So then these alterations can extend and grow and eventually give lure to the different diseases. And this means allergies, cardiovascular disease, asthma, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, joint problems, of course, also mental health problems, and so on and so forth. So then, taking into account this origin of diseases, yes, according to the tenets of this Dutch research group, in our project, we thought about whether it would be possible to analyze our metabolism, and we could maybe see how the stresses are altering our metabolism. Because nowadays, with these techniques I was mentioning, oxidative stress can be measured in urine and blood samples, and inflammatory stress can be measured also. Psychological stress in a certain way can be measured too, although the procedure is more complex, and for the time being, we didn't really go into it. And then metabolic stress. Metabolic stress is a rather more abstract concept, but what we have done is decompose it into carbohydrate, metabolic problems, alterations in the lipid metabolism, and also the gut microbiota. And on the basis of all this, we have these disease-inducing factors, and we can measure them. With omic technologies, we can quantify how each one of these factors is in our bodies. If we detect any that is altered, then we can try and invert that and go back to normal, because we know that if that alteration lasts in time, it eventually leads to disease. So, of course, it's in our interest to detect those that are altered and go back to normal if possible. And how can we do that? Well, we said that these stresses, all these factors, are caused by external factors such as food intake, physical exercise, so we can give personalized recommendations to revert all this, to change nutrition, food intake, even sleeping habits, eating habits, and even the way we have of understanding life, to try and normalize those factors that may cause disease and that are altered. So this is the Preventomics Principle, yes? It's the first innovative factor of this project. We're going to be measuring the status of the metabolism to be able to intervene by means of personalized recommendations in food habits to make sure that we change what is not working well and that can eventually give you to disease. This is the first and foremost goal. How do we apply this? And here we go on to the more futuristic or technological side of the project that has to do with personalized nutrition. What we do in Preventomics is, first of all, to gather information about the habits of every individual. Food habits, what do they consume, what is the daily food intake and daily habits, what people are like, how can they be classified into different types of personalities. We gather all this information using different tools given to us by new information and communication technologies, yes, mobile applications, web portals, and so on and so forth. And in this way, the subjects participating also fill in some questionnaires. Then we take saliva samples, we analyze some genes, we want to know the gene pool. We know there is information, genetic information, that is good as well for personalized nutrition recommendations. Then we gather blood and urine samples, and we apply all these omic sciences. We determine the status of the metabolism of every individual. We also measure weight and height and different anthropometric parameters. And with all this information through digital technologies and in artificial intelligence, we generate personalized recommendations for every individual. And these recommendations can be accessed through different channels. What we've been doing in our project is to try and see how we can make it easier for people to gain access to this personalized information. And we've done it using 3 different pathways. First of all, a study that is being carried out in Reus, in Eurecat, together with Aldi, the supermarket chain that is actively participating in the project. In this case, what we do is make it easy for people to write down their weekly shopping list. And what every individual does is, once we have all this information, the person is recommended out of the Aldi catalog what foodstuffs are more healthier, which are to be avoided, and in this way the shopping list can be personalized. The idea is not to give them a weekly diet, but better said, to give them every week the tools for decision making towards healthy shopping lists. Then we have a study going on in Denmark, in Copenhagen, in which food home delivery company works on personalized menus that are delivered according to the metabolic state of that person. So then using the Preventomics information to elaborate the menus. It could be a company like this one, home delivery, also a restaurant or whatever. And then finally, we have a study that's being carried out between the UK and Poland, in which professional nutritionists use the information coming from Preventomics for their daily nutritional recommendations, and this is done through a professional application. These are studies that we are doing on voluntary individuals, yes, to see how we can apply this Preventomics idea to different points of our everyday living, such as when we write a shopping list, a home delivery of menus, and also also nutritionists as professionals, because I didn't say it. We don't want to substitute nutritionists. It is not an online nutritionist, not at all. It is just another tool for nutritionists to know what the metabolic status of a person is and to be able to offer services as well, personalized services. So to get an idea of how we are right now in the study in Reus, we are completing it. In fact, towards the end of the year, we will have the last voluntary individual participating, and we're talking about 180 volunteer subjects. They came to our facilities. We are a healthcare center. We can actually gather biological samples. They come along to us. We extract saliva. They also give blood and urine, and then they fill in some questionnaires from their homes because there's a technological application. But they give us all this information. Then we gather all the samples. We obtain results in a month. These are technologies that require some time for analysis. And on the basis of this, the volunteer at home goes on living normally, writes out a shopping list using this Preventomics website and the Preventomics system. And then they find out what the best food is for their metabolic status, what to avoid. And they continue like that for 4 months. How? Well, first of all, the first step, one goes into the website to get the shopping list ready. It's a very similar website to that of any online shop. So, well, as an individual, I will select those recommended products. I then write down my shopping list. I have access as well to just any other product on the Aldi catalog, right? And finally, I generate my shopping list. This is not an online trade or commerce application. It's not, I mean, Aldi has only given us the catalog for us to see how a normal catalog interacts with the Preventomics system. And then the shopping, of course, well, the recommendation is for every person to go to those shops that are closer and shops that one trusts in the neighborhood, promoting this proximity consumption, of course. Then, on the basis of this, we have 4 intervention months, meaning that the person writes out the shopping list for during these 4 months. And finally, there's a second visit coming to our facilities in Reus. We once again gather biological samples, and then on the basis of results, we will see whether this has worked or not, whether those parameters have been improved, those that were altered in the metabolism. We will be having results at the beginning of the coming year. We will have all the results. We will start with statistical analysis. And what about our work in progress? Well, the Denmark study has been completed already. We have the information, the samples of the last person to go to the facilities. We've still not analyzed data, so it's early days. What about our study in Reus here in Spain? As I said, the last voluntary person will come in December. Then we will gather all the results, all the data, better said, and we will start analyzing. What have we seen for the time being? Well, as to these volunteers, they get thinner, they slim down. Some of them have actually taken 8 to 10 kilos off following the Preventomics program during these 4 months. This is really good news because the study hadn't been designed for taking weight off. Not at all. It was just for more, healthy habits. But this has been one of the results that we can see already. Quite interesting. And then we have, remember, the study of Poland and UK professional nutritionists. We are still recruiting people in Poland. There was a huge problem with COVID. In the UK, it was even worse. In research institutions, in the Southampton University, I mean, the labs had to be closed down. They would only work on COVID research. And because of this, we'll have to wait till next year. And up to here, my presentation to give you an overview of the project. That's all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. As I was telling you, I'm delighted. And I mean, now all we needed was this fantastic shopping list. Yes, I mean, to make sure that one writes down the food, good proximity food that's healthy. Alba, our communications and audiovisual director from OAFI, is also participating in this Preventomics conference. Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you Josep Maria del Bas, for this presentation of such an interesting and promising project such as Preventomics. Interesting, especially because it means a tool, as he himself said. It is something that's going to be helping us in our daily lives to prevent disease and improve quality of life of people. And well, here we have so many concepts. Yes, it's quality of life, it's helping, it's people, and this means OAFI Foundation. This is why we are part of the project, and this is why we share this main goal with Preventomics. What is the role of the OAFI Foundation in the project? Well, we disseminate this project. Our task, our mission has to do essentially with communication. And furthermore, we coordinate this communication campaign. And as you can read on the slide, we are the link, the liaison between research and the user, that is the patient or the person interested in going towards healthier habits and going towards using this tool. What actions do we implement at OAFI? Well, a number of actions following different avenues. On the first hand, we want to increase awareness and sensitivity among the scientific community. This is a very important paradigm for us, and it's an intensive work on our behalf. I could mention the EULAR conference, the European Alliance of Rheumatology Societies and Associations. OAFI went there to introduce the Preventomics Project. Here you see a couple of photographs with the Vice President of the Committee of Persons with Rheumatism and Arthrosis, and it represents 21 million patients in Europe. And then this image here of Nathalie Verb, who was here yesterday and, well, the day before, giving us great presentations from the European Medicines Agency. Then, something very, very important that means support and dissemination. We have the pre-Congress of OAFI. This took place on October the 13th. And from the moment in which we started in the project up to today, well, we have done a lot for the dissemination of the Preventomics project among the scientific community. And the OAFI pre-Congress is a scientific medical congress. We have had the chance to present this to relevant entities such as publishing houses, BMC, BMJ, health agencies such as EMA, also the Spanish Medicine Agency and relevant institutions such as OSC and so many more. And a number of research communities. Here we see some images of previous years of the OAFI pre-Congress. We see Natalie Baer once again, Ms. Palmer, who's the president of the Arthritis Foundation in the USA, Dr. Juan Riese and Dr. Maria Jose Gonzalez, amongst many others, of course, whom we've had the pleasure to welcome here. Other conferences and meetings, as I included in one of the first slides, we've been working for the dissemination of the project, and we have coordinated that dissemination, not only in the OAFI pre-Congress and in these different meetings and seminars, but in a number of meetings and seminars, up to 40 no less. Here we see some, such as the session of the cluster on food and health, healthy diets, then also the day cluster session, the ex-patient Barcelona Congress, the ICT and Success on Health platform, and the 41st Semergen National Congress. And here we made sure to explain the initiative too. One of the most recent actions is that, and I have to say we are enormously proud, we were able to go to the Spanish Senate a couple of weeks ago in September to disseminate, amongst other things, what is it that we do. But not only that, one, we talked about a very important project, which is the Preventomics Project at the Senate. And this Preventomics initiative was put forward as a measure to prevent chronic disease. We have also been working on publication of scientific articles and papers, not only OAFI, all the other partners, part of the project. Here we see some on obesity, the one that we did directly on the patient's vision on nutrition, taking those marvelous recommendations from Dr. Arranz. She came yesterday precisely talking about the Mediterranean diet and other publications of other partners and groups. And, well, we're creating all this content to get to the scientific community and from there to people, to the users. That is the second communication avenue that we are focusing on at OAFI. We want to raise awareness, and that means, of course, I would say our most important mission really to make people aware, to make users aware, and we are having meetings and seminars with important institutions to make sure that we tell them about results, as Dr. Del Bas was telling us. Yeah, we're going to be having such interesting results at the beginning of the coming year. Yeah, and the European Consumers Organizations, the Confederation of Family Organizations in the European Union, the European Community of Consumer Cooperatives, and the European Medicine Agency through its patient engagement department. They are all participating, or better said, we are participating with all. And then something else, we are here in our yearly meeting with patients. Well, here you see an image of last year. It took place online because of the pandemic, and we had 90,500 visualizations. That's not bad at all. And 32,000 subscribers in our YouTube channel. So we are fully aware about the fact that this means incredible dissemination power, and we try to foster it and work on it all the time. We want to make sure it is all very visible, including also this project. Here you see some images of these previous years of the OAFI conference. Yet another very important dissemination channel for the OAFI Foundation is OAFI Radio. It's a weekly program on the radio, and every week we share many of the interesting subjects for so many people, and it's been a pleasure to count with many different people of the Eurecat team who are working on research and also as volunteers of the Preventomics Project. Other channels that we work on because we want to make sure we get to users, well, obviously social networks. In social networks, we try and make sure that we have users updated and that we keep the contact. We want to promote interaction with users and consumers and patients who will find our project useful. And we also have a video that was carried out by Eurecat to be able to know about the project deeply. It's done in a very dynamic, understandable way for patients to find it easy to follow. And last but not least, next steps, as we said, we're going to be disseminating the results that will come very soon. So we will make sure that we generate good audiovisual material that's accessible and very dynamic and informative to get patients and users informed about the Preventomics tool. We know that it is really very promising and useful, and we are seeing it already in the preliminary results. Very important to improve our quality of life. That's all from me. Thank you very much indeed.